Of course, as we are entering this warm season, as the summer is upon us, many U.S. cities are actually reporting fewer killings. And they also hope that some of these crime strategies that city officials are undertaking will hopefully prevent a summer surge. So that is the goal. The goal, of course, is a safer city, wherever your city is. Now, this expected bump in violent crime this summer comes every year. So you got the mayors, you got police officials around the U.S. rolling out strategies. These are not foreign strategies. These are very familiar strategies, strategies of making officers more visible, engaging with community groups, in some cases, leaning on civilians to enforce the curfews and help keep the peace. This is some of the things that are happening here in Baltimore. We're talking about the curfew that goes into effect Memorial Day weekend. Chicago is among the U.S. cities that are trying some of these strategies, but Chicago specifically is under scrutiny following a mayoral race that focused on public safety. So in response to demands for change, the previous mayor did not do the best that she could do in reducing crime and a host of things. But violence often surges during the summer months. It's hot. People are outside more. There are just more opportunities. So this holiday weekend will undoubtedly wrap up the changeover from spring to summer. And it's really going to put more pressure on Mayor Brandon Johnson's new administration to deliver some type of improvement, even if it's a short-term one, along with some kind of long-term strategies that the former union organizer advocated for while campaigning to lead this country's third largest city. You knew that, right? Chicago is the country's third largest city. Now, of course, the mayor is talking about building a coalition. Of course, he says it's going to take everybody, not just the police, not just city government, to ensure that communities can live and thrive in peace and safety. So we're definitely going to be watching. Now, most U.S. cities are reporting fewer homicides. This year is of course, is by not at any means perfect, but according to data collected by the Council on Criminal Justice, which created a crime threads working group, this was done in hopes of providing more real-time information on crime. There is a tentative reprieve following spikes that began back in 2020 and began to come down last year. And at this point, it is even better. But there's still a lot of work to do. The totals remain far higher than pre-pandemic reports. But they're definitely cause for serious concern, but it's not for panic. All right. And so some cities that are seeing success, they're generally investing in a balanced approach that includes policing, but also supports community-based approaches. So there is that balance. You have to recognize there is a need for law enforcement, but we also have to emphasize the prevention and intervention in the community. This is very important. Officials in Cleveland, Newark, Philly have announced summer plans that make officers more visible in the communities. The areas that violent crimes have been happening, they're going to have a larger police presence there. They're also trying to promote these community efforts to prevent violence, to provide alternative activities, try to give, and you constantly hear folks say, oh, the recreation centers, and why the recs are closed, there's nothing for the kids to do. And so the theory here, the strategy is providing activities and positive recreation to keep kids busy. You know what they say, the idle mind is the devil's playground, right? So the thought process is giving kids activities, giving these young people things to do, and hopefully they will go a alternative path. Now in Baltimore, not police officers, but city officials will enforce the curfews essentially on teenagers, which starts Memorial Weekend and will extend through Labor Day. I think that it should just be that going forward. And personally, I think that it should be penalties. Something, we're not talking about sending them to jail, but it needs to be something. There needs to be something. And if this works, hopefully they can extend it, maybe. Now, it is controversial, but it has long been on the books. But here's the thing, it's rarely enforced. There has been a curfew, but there hasn't really been any enforcement mechanism, and there's truly not one now. I remember being in middle school and getting suspended from school, leaving early, right? I didn't have a bus ticket because they were usually administered during lunchtime. And I ended up leaving school. Actually, I wasn't suspended this particular time, although I got suspended many times in school. I think I was sick, and I went home early. So I didn't have the bus ticket, so I had to walk home. And maybe from school, I probably lived about 2.5 miles. 2.5 miles. So anyway, walked home, and halfway there, a police officer pulls up and asks me for my early dismissal. Why are you out in the streets? Did your school give you something to say that you're not in school? Which I had, my early dismissal, showed it to him. And the officer actually took me home. But the point I'm trying to make is this is a time when there was curfews. This is a time when kids couldn't just walk in a store in the middle of the day when you're supposed to be in school without there being, wait, you're supposed to be in school. We're not going to support your delinquency. Go to school, young man. That kind of thing. But this free-for-all started, and stores just want money. I don't even think they even care where it's coming from for whatever reason. But we need to go back to the old days in this regard. So I do support this summer enforcement of the curfew. I think that the curfew should always be in effect for young people. Now, so we gotta keep in mind that 2 teens were wounded as hundreds of teenagers gathered at the Inner Harbor Sunday night. And I've seen a lot of wild activity at the Inner Harbor over the years. But the shooting that happened in April, which unfolded while officers were trying to break up a fight at the scene, added to the significant spike in youth violence. Now, this has persisted even as overall shootings and homicides trend downward in the city. But it is still something that has to be constantly looked at, has to be constantly addressed. So according to Mayor Scott's plan, non-law enforcement staff, because they're busy, doing something else, but they're going to approach the children and teens violating the curfew on the weekend and holiday nights. So this is what is being reported. In Baltimore, they're going to first encourage the kids to go home. Right? That doesn't work. Then the children will be transported to a youth engagement center that provides a supervised environment to hang out. We'll see how that goes. And I think that while I support the curfew, while I absolutely accept the need for the curfew, I think that some of these steps have to be tweaked a bit, but we'll see. Maybe it's going to work out just fine. So I'm not gonna, be a Debbie Downer on it just yet. Now in Detroit, federal prosecutors are expanding efforts to help local police this summer by taking armed carjacking cases and business robberies in high crime areas. So they're really focusing on that, expanding that. So these prosecutors are expanding that. So they really want to help police with regards to these type of cases, even certain gun cases. So you have the feds coming in. So they're really turning up the heat. Okay, federal convictions obviously bring longer sentences. So these in Detroit, these carjackings, these robberies of businesses, these gun cases, the feds in Detroit are going to get involved. So these most dangerous criminals are going to be prosecuted immediately in federal court, according to the U.S. attorney in Detroit. So that is something. In the downtown Detroit area over the weekend, over one weekend in April, Police Chief James White, instituted a crowd control strategy, including increased police presence. Curfews for minors are going to be enforced, like we're seeing in other cities. But there was half a dozen shootings in the downtown area of Detroit, one fatal, over one weekend in April. I want to make sure that we're clear on that. So it is definitely picking up. Chicago, as there's that pressure. They're definitely approaching Memorial Day weekend, which traditionally we said is a kickoff to the warm weather. Crowds are going to gather, and their potential for crime is there. This intervention work, it definitely takes time for people to see results, but you have to believe in it and you have to go forward with it. And we're definitely going to continue to talk about this. Watch. Hopefully, these cities around the country are successful with their crime prevention strategies.